DATV, and the Greater Dayton Area League of Women Voters present Meet the Candidates, your chance to learn about the candidates running for office in the November election.
Hi, I'm Patty Skilkin, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton Area. I'm here today talking to two candidates for the Dayton Municipal Court. The Dayton Municipal Court serves the citizens within the boundaries of the city of Dayton. They preside over issues over felony preliminary hearings, in-jail arraignments, and civil cases. Additionally, they hear default civil cases and preside over probation hearings, motions to suppress, and hundreds of other issues raised by written motions. The salary for this job, if I'm wrong, ladies, you can correct me, is, we are told, $119,850 a year. The two candidates for this position are Colette Moorman and Mia Wortham Spells. I'm going to give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves, why they want the job. We'll start with Colette. Colette, you have 2 minutes to plead your case.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. My name is Colette Moorman. I am running for judge of Dayton Municipal Court. I grew up in the Dayton area. I went to Northridge schools, then the University of Dayton and University of Dayton Law School. I've been serving the public for 24 straight years, 22 of those at the Dayton Municipal Court. I started my career at Dayton as a city prosecutor, where in that time I dealt with victims of crime, defense attorneys, police officers, detectives, and I eventually became the lead domestic violence prosecutor. And in that time I got to see the impact that violence and violent crimes can have on families and children, and wanted to address those issues. 10 years ago, the judges appointed me to be their magistrate for the court, and I've done that for 10 years, as well as an acting judge for the court. And I used the skills that I learned as a prosecutor in my capacity as a judge. I have gained a reputation of being tough but yet very fair. We have a lot of good programs at the court that we utilize to get people help for, say, mental health issues, alcohol and drug abuse issues, domestic violence counseling, to try to deter these individuals from committing future crimes, and I believe I have a good balance to address those issues. I also have received many endorsements in my run for this seat, including the Democratic endorsement from the Montgomery County Democratic Party and Ohio Democratic Women's Caucus, many labor and unions, and the Dayton Fraternal Order of Police. But I believe on the election day it really comes down to my record, and I believe that I am the right candidate for the job.
Thanks, Colette. Mia, it's your turn. 2 minutes to tell us about yourself.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I am attorney Mia Wortham Spells. I'm running for judge of the Dayton Municipal Court. I have been in practice 28 years. I earned my Juris Doctorate at the University of Dayton School of Law. I started my career as Colette in the City of Dayton Prosecutor's Office as an assistant prosecutor. I opened up a private practice 22 years ago, and 22 years ago I also was appointed an acting judge in the Dayton Municipal Court. In my private practice, I have civil cases, I have criminal cases, I have domestic relations cases. I have handled everything from a death penalty case all the way down to a minor misdemeanor jaywalking case. And those three visions and three prisms that I look through in terms of the justice system as an assistant prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, and as an acting judge gives me the view of justice in a different way. I also am intimately involved in the justice system, as my son is a Dayton police officer. My husband was a retired Dayton police officer, so I'm intimately involved in the justice system. I pray every night and every morning that my son comes home safely. I understand what it is for a police officer to be out there on the street. I think when we go through the communities, most people want a safe community, most people want a clean community. I believe I have the experience to be the judge in the Dayton Municipal Court. I've worked in this community, I've been on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I've held many positions in our community, and I think that this experience gives me the opportunity to be the best judge for the Dayton Municipal Court.
Thank you, Mia. Mia, I'm going to give you the first question. Let's talk about how judges get to be judges. Most citizens never find themselves in a courtroom.
That's true.
I'm told statistically that most lawyers don't find themselves in a courtroom. So here we are electing judges. When my husband is a lawyer, and every election we get telephone calls from friends of mine saying, who should I vote for judge? Because they have no idea. Especially when you factor in that judges have to raise campaign funds to run a campaign, which opens up possibilities of influence from special interests who maybe were big donors. Is this the best way to get to be a judge? Is there a better way, or should we just keep on electing them?
I sat on a panel some years ago with Chief Justice Tom Moyer when they talked about selecting judges in a different manner. Oftentimes, though, in some states that they do have a merit system, or that it's another selection system other than an election system, it seems to still have that political undergird, essentially. And so I think that at this point we understand that the citizens are the ones who are going to vote. And I think that the citizens in this community are educated enough, and we talk to the forums, candidate nights. We had a candidate night the other evening that was a lot of people, and I think people are more and more educated. And one thing I've learned is that one time in the courtroom, it gives a person the view of what that court ought to be or what it ought not to be. And so I have to be very, very, very cognizant as a judge that although most people probably may not go to a courtroom, that one opportunity, that one experience for a litigant or a criminal defendant or a witness in a case is so important. And so from your bailiff, from the court personnel, from the judge, it is respect and it's the dignity of all the people in the courtroom. And I think that that's what's important. And I think the citizens ought to elect the judge that they choose.
Thank you, Mia. Colette, same question. Is this the best way that we can come up with, or do you think there's an alternative route to becoming a judge that makes a little bit more sense?
I agree with Mia. I believe the people need to elect their judges because they are the ones, we're running the court as the people's court, especially municipal courts. And it's unfortunate that sometimes judicial races don't get the press and the prestige that a presidential race would get and bring the voters out. But the people have more of a chance of coming into Dayton Municipal Court than any other for minor issues, traffic citations, minor crimes, up to the higher level offenses that we cover, assaults and domestic violence. And the people need to elect the person that they want to be presiding over those cases. And as Mia said, we go to many candidate nights. I believe this whole process, the democratic process, is very important because it makes the judicial candidates go out in the public to speak at these events and get information out and put information out on social media so that the public can be educated on who they want to elect as their judge, because it is for them that we're even there, and I believe that it should not change.
Thank you, Colette. I'm going to start with you this time.
All right.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, yes. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate, not equal, but adequate access to justice, either through the public defender's office, or do we have to count on a lot of pro bono efforts from attorneys in private practice? Is everybody getting a fair shake, or is there some improvement that can be made in that area?
Well, I never would say there's not room for improvement in anything, and we don't have a perfect system, but we have appointed attorneys that are given to defendants who cannot afford representation. There are many attorneys in the area who give pro bono time and represent their interests. The prosecutor's office obviously is there to represent victims and the police officer's interests, but I don't think that that it's unequal, because anyone who can't afford it is provided every opportunity to have counsel represented for them, and we have some very good attorneys who are willing to step up and take over that role.
Thank you. Mia, same question, 2 minutes to answer.
I think that the representation for the citizens of Dayton is is probably excellent, because I sat on the Montgomery County Public Defenders Commission, and I think that the public defenders in Montgomery County do an excellent job. There's also assigned counsel, and they do an excellent job. But the question as to equal access has to do oftentimes with prosecutorial discretion. It often has to do with police discretion on whether or not to arrest, whether or not to cite someone. Also the prosecutor's decision and discretion as to whether to reduce a charge. And so sometimes there is a difference. And those are the hard facts. Unfortunately, there is a difference sometimes. The impact is realized when we see that there are far more African Americans that receive citations, that go to jail. So those are the hard facts, unfortunately, that we have to recognize. And so the access in terms of representation is one thing, but what ultimately results is another. And we cannot deny those hard facts that there is a difference.
Thank you. I'm going to stick with you for the next question. You already touched on something I was wondering about. Statistically, you're absolutely right. Minorities tend to be incarcerated much more often than non-minorities. Right. Is there anything the court can do to address that? And the other thing I've always wondered about is when you have a very low income client, or potential client that's going to have to go to court, how is it decided whether that client gets the public defender or maybe some real hotshot who's doing it pro bono? How is that decided which attorney he gets?
Well, the public defender's office, they will take all defendants that qualify, except if there's a conflict. If there's a conflict, say that person there may be a witness or someone that the public defender's office may have already represented before that causes a conflict. But then there's an assigned attorney given that case. And the Dayton Municipal Court, they have an assigned counsel list. And those persons on that list are qualified, they're excellent. I think, though, to go to your point, that it is as a result of prosecutorial discretion and police discretion as to what the impact is with minorities, and it is undeniable that there are more African Americans that are incarcerated for nonviolent offenses. That's just the reality, and I think the reality is that when we have mandatory sentencing, that causes African Americans to be incarcerated far more than other groups. But in the Dayton Municipal Court, the only mandatory sentencing that we would come before our court would be in terms of alcohol offenses. There are some others, but they rarely, prosecutors rarely go forward with some of the soliciting. There are some that are mandatory, but basically the only mandatory sentencing in the misdemeanor area is in terms of alcohol offenses, driving under the influence offenses, and those are graduated in terms of how much time a person spends depending on how many prior offenses that they have. So we don't confront the issue of mandatory sentencing. We do confront the issue of what the bail ought to be, and oftentimes bails are set too high for poor people. And when poor people can't afford a high bond, then it results in them sitting in jail. They lose employment, they lose touch with their family, and then they're oftentimes released at the time of trial.
Thank you, Mia. Colette, you're in the trenches here, dealing with public defenders or pro bono attorneys. How do you feel about this issue? Is there anything the courts can do to set the scales more in balance?
Well, Mia addressed how the public defenders select their clients because it's based on their income, and as she said, if there is a conflict, there are attorneys who have given their names to the individual judges to be appointed to represent them, and those attorneys will get a call if there is a conflict. So she did address that already. I will say that as judges, we don't control who is standing before us. If there is an issue with police citing certain people or the prosecutors choosing to charge certain people, those decisions are made, and those are separate agencies from the court. So we have to deal with the individual that's standing in front of us. And every single person, I can tell you, in Dayton Municipal Court gets fair hearings. We have 3 African American judges out of 5. And I would suggest if anyone believes that there's any inequalities, come down to our court. It's public. It's your court. You can come down and visit anytime and see that the judges, all of the judges, including myself when I sit as a judge, We give people many, many opportunities to get help with all the programs that are offered. The license intervention program to try to help them get a valid driver's license, mental health counseling, alcohol and drug treatment when necessary, the John School for folks who pick up prostitutes. I mean, we have all kinds of different programs that are available, and those are given equally. As far as bond goes, I would disagree with my opponent that someone's race is not a factor ever in deciding whether or not a bond should be a certain amount. We look at the case, the level of violence, the danger to the community, whether or not they have prior times of not showing up for court, all those factors. And sure, some people do end up sitting in jail and can't make their bond, but I would disagree that in Dayton Municipal Court that there is some unfair advantage being given to one demographic over another, and I would encourage the public to come down and witness it for yourself.
Thank you. This is our wrap up. You're going to each get 2 minutes this is your time to plead your case, to tell the voters anything you want them to know about you. Colette, I'm going to start with you. 2 minutes to talk to the voters.
Thank you. I'm dedicated to the city of Dayton. I have been a public servant for 24 years, 22 of those in the city of Dayton Municipal Court, as I said earlier. I have consistently served and been either a prosecutor or a senior magistrate for the court. For over 22 years, I'm dedicated to this community. I will ensure that everyone has their rights protected, victims and offenders, and specifically focusing on the offender standing in front of me to determine whether or not they're a menace or a danger to the community and need to be dealt with harshly, or whether or not they qualify for a program, because it is my view that sometimes Dayton Municipal Court is the first and only opportunity a person has to get help. We get a lot of family members that come in, even victims of crime, that say that they want the offender to get help. And I believe that if we can get someone educated, make them get their GED, get a job, get mental health counseling, get treatment for whatever is the problem, that not only would maybe help the offender not commit a future crime, but make the city of Dayton better for everyone. We're on a limited time, so I would encourage anyone, if you want more information on me or my campaign, to go to ColetteMoorman.com, and I hope to have your support in your vote on November 3rd, Colette Moorman for Judge of Dayton Municipal Court. And thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Mia, this is your time, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Again, I am attorney Mia Wortham Spells, and the theme of my campaign is We the People. And we selected We the People because in 1787 the United States Constitution was drafted, and it talked about we the people in order to establish a more perfect union, establish justice. We are now 227 years later, and we're still seeking to establish justice in some communities. And so that's why I'm running. I think that we the people can select a judge that sees justice in a different way. We believe, my campaign believes, that this campaign is one where the people understand that justice is not always the same, unfortunately. And I've been in the trenches. I started out as a prosecutor. I sit as an acting judge. I do criminal defense work. But do not forget that I started as a prosecutor, and I know who needs to go to jail. And unfortunately, there are some people that need to go to jail, and they need to stay in jail. They're a danger to our community. I understand that. But there are so many people that do not belong in jail for nonviolent offenses, and they're sitting in jail for high bonds. These people do not need to be in jail. Those are the people that my justice, in terms of what I see, and it's the prism in which I look, and we all look, in terms of what is justice. I believe that we the people can elect a judge that sees justice, who has been in through the trenches and understands that this justice is the justice of we the people. Elect Mia Wortham Spells, Judge, Dayton Municipal Court. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mia. We've been talking to 2 candidates for Dayton Municipal Court. I want to remind everybody to please vote November 3rd. It is a privilege, it is a right, and in my opinion, it is a duty. You can look for the League of Women Voters Voters Guide. Will be out the week of October 5th, I believe. It'll be in libraries and a gazillion other places. If you have trouble finding it, call us. We'll make sure you get one. And on Election Day, we do maintain a hotline, so if you've got questions about your polling place or identification that's required, call the League of Women Voters, 228-4 228-4041, 228-4041, and thank you for being with us today.